For having me here today. Welcome, everybody. How's everyone doing?
Great.
Fantastic. I know you all did introductions, but I would love to just have you all just let me know who you are, so we can start there, and then I'll get us started on the class.
My name is Iris. This is my first nutrition class. I'm so looking forward to it.
Great. Thank you for being here.
My name is Sandy. I can't wait to see what this is about.
Awesome.
My name is Ala, and also when I try this, looks good.
Great.
Maria Villanueva, I'm happy to be here.
Welcome.
Maria Zeitz, nice to be here.
Hi, Mercy, nice to be here.
Marcy? Okay, thank you.
Ruthie.
Ruthie, I'm sorry.
Dorian.
Nice to meet you, Dorian.
I am Sandra, it's my second nutrition class.
Ah, great. Okay.
Rachel, I enjoy always the classes.
Ah, great.
Cecilia, I've always learned a lot here.
Delia, and I love papaya.
I promise you, everyone's going to love papaya after today.
Sandra, and I love papaya too.
And last but not least,
I'm Scott, and I hope to stay out of the video.
well, thank you all. It's so nice to meet you all, and I really am super excited to be here today to teach this class on if you are what you eat, what's eating you. It's a very special class. You all are the first to go through this series with me. I want to share just a little bit about my background and what brought me to develop a class like this. So Jose and I know each other from working in some nonprofit work together around nutrition, but my background began many, many years before I met Jose. I lived in the Pacific Northwest and worked in the food and restaurant industry, but also worked overseeing nutrition programs. Came back to my Texas roots just a few years ago and have been working in nutrition education here in San Antonio. And really, honestly, it's kind of been a combination of my own personal health journey and my growth and all the work that I've done over the years that have led me to developing courses like this, where I don't just believe that it's food and diet that keep us healthy. I believe that there are a lot of other factors, and one of those things is helping people educate themselves about their own body wisdom to truly understand how to keep ourselves healthy and develop really good, healthy eating habits. So, with that being said, what I wanted to create for us in this series is just really taking a deeper dive into what is it that leads us to choose different foods that we enjoy or maybe just want for comfort. What are the things that are leading us to develop relationships with the foods in the way that we're developing relationships with foods? And there are different things that might trigger us. And so we'll be exploring different things like eating patterns. We'll be talking about stress. We'll be talking about things like energy and fatigue. You all have a very unique situation, right? You're going through or maybe have gone through a health experience that has changed the course of your physiology. Emotionally, it's changed you. You know, you're going through some changes in your body because of that. And so I think this class is going to be a wonderful opportunity for you to tune in, even more so if you haven't already, to just look at some different ways on how we approach food. So I'm super excited to be starting off this first week with one of my favorite recipes. And I will tell you, like I said, if you don't love papaya, you will leave today loving papaya. I created this recipe kind of just, I was doing a demonstration at a farmer's market back in January. And when you think about the foods that we have access to, I feel like we're really, we have really good, fresh tropical fruits. And we have really good citrus fruits in the winter, which seems a little bit strange for me coming back to Texas from the Pacific Northwest. But I love that we have access to that, and I wanted to come up with something that was easy to digest, very light, very colorful, had lots of great ingredients that provide lots of good vitamins and nutrients, but also something that was kind of plant-based, because a lot of times when we're looking at our diet and things that are a little bit easier for us to digest, things like what we're going to focus on in this recipe are really critical. So what I'd like to do is jump into our recipe first, and then we'll have a chance to try it. I want to make sure you all get a chance to try it. But while we're enjoying our recipe, then we're going to dive into some of the handouts that you see there, because I want us to spend the majority of our time really just kind of discussing what are some of the things that will affect us. And today we're going to be focusing on some fundamental kind of building blocks, more on the biology. So we're going to kind of go back a little bit, take you back to maybe like the health and biology class that you may have taken many years ago. And just kind of start with the biology of our body and kind of what's happening in our systems, and then we're going to build on from there. So let's dive in. I don't know, is anybody here a Bob Ross fan?
Yes.
The painter, right? He's really good at like helping people relax, but he always had this little phrase where he'd say like, let's have some fun. So that's what we're gonna do next. We're gonna dive into this recipe and have a little fun. Okay, so first things first, so we're gonna do some pickled onions. That's kind of the star of this show in addition to the papaya. Has anybody made pickled onions before, just personally? Okay, is there a way that you like to prepare them or something that you find very easy to do when you make them?
No, I think this is a good recipe. It's similar to this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so the elements for our pickled onions are going to be one red onion we've got here. Pretty good size, so I'm going to slice that up. And what I want to do is add a little bit of just regular table salt to that. And why we're doing that is for two reasons. So we want to season it, but we also want to draw out some of the moisture to kind of take away some of that sharp bite. I love red onion. I don't know, some people think it's a little too strong, but that's what we're going to do with that. And then we're going to make kind of like a brine here on the stovetop that will include a little bit of apple cider vinegar, which is definitely good for us because it's a probiotic, right? It's a good thing. It's fermented. It's good for our gut. And a happy gut means a happy person, so we like that. And then we're also going to do a little bit of water. So it'll be about half a cup of apple cider vinegar, a quarter cup of water, and then we're just going to add two other elements to that. I have some regular sugar, just 2 tablespoons, and then a little bit more salt. And what I'm going to do, actually this is my salt for the rest of the recipe, my apologies. What I'm going to do is basically make that brine, and we're going to let it cool. Through the magic of television, I do have some prepared for us today. But let's get that started. So I'm going to do my brine first so we can get that going. And I did test our burner, so this should hopefully be working. I see the light is on. Perfect. Okay, so if you all have ever used apple cider vinegar, you see kind of the sediment that's at the bottom. That is not to tell you that this thing is spoiled, that it's bad. That's really good stuff. That's the fermentation. That's what they call sometimes the mother. Like that's where the good stuff is, and you want that in there. There's even like tonics now that you can purchase that have all these different flavors, but they're based with apple cider vinegar. They have ginger. Some have like I've tried some with beets. I mean, they make them in so many different flavors. They're really good. So I'm a big fan of apple cider vinegar. Plus, it's got kind of a natural sweetness, right? And I often think when we're thinking about like clean, healthy eating, we want to just kind of put some natural ingredients. While we're going to be adding some sugar, you could actually leave that out. There's sweetness in here. If you're not wanting to do any kind of refined sugar, you could leave the sugar out of this and they'd still be just as delicious. So I'm going to just add half a cup of our apple cider vinegar. And I love the smell of it, so it is really good. Now, if you didn't have apple cider vinegar, you could just use a regular vinegar as well. And then we're going to add a quarter cup of just regular water. And then, as I mentioned, we've got our 2 tablespoons of sugar and just half a teaspoon of regular table salt. And we're going to bring that to a boil and make sure okay, we're working. I didn't see the light anymore, but we're good. Okay, and then quick show of hands, who here is pretty comfortable in the kitchen? Does some cooking at home already? Okay, I love this. Who here maybe like, I could use a few pointers? Okay, all right, okay. We are all amongst friends here. I'm going to show you some tricks. Okay, this is what we're here for. So with this red onion, things that I like to do, and I've been cooking for many years, but I often say 2 things, like keep yourself safe and do things slowly. Also, because you should have fun in the kitchen. It shouldn't be a stressful thing. And today, obviously, we're talking about stress. We want to relax. We want to enjoy things. So something that I like to do, first of all, I'm going to put my gloves on. They were camouflaged here with my napkin. You could use any kind of onion, but if you've been to restaurants or you've enjoyed pickled onions before, red is kind of the choice, right? Because they're this beautiful color once they get pickled. And that's just fun, and they're tasty. So what I like to do is I cut off this part first. I don't want to cut the root so much because I want to keep it all intact as I'm cutting it, but basically we just kind of want to make some thin slices, but I want to get rid of this peel first. And I often say, sometimes when you're purchasing onions, they're great to purchase, you could get a bag, but what I like to do sometimes is just what I'm doing right now, peeling off the layers and then putting them in a plastic Ziploc bag in my vegetable crisper. And I find that they stay they keep pretty well longer that way. Sometimes we get a little excited and say, I'm going to eat healthy, and we go out and we shop and we get all this stuff, and then it goes bad before we can get to it, right? And I'm a big proponent of using everything and not wasting anything. So doing something like this will help keep your onions intact, but you could do this with any kind of onion and just take the peel off, and then they're ready to go too. I'm always about giving people quick tips in the kitchen, especially if we're always in such a rush. We want things that are quick and easy. Something like this, you could even chop it and dice it and keep it in little containers in your fridge for the week as you're cooking. Anything that'll save you a little bit of time, peace of mind, right? Okay, so I have my onion, and what I'm going to do is just cut it right in the middle. So I have two halves like so. And I have this nice flat surface, so nothing's going to be wiggling around while I'm cutting. And the other thing is, I hope you all can see me here. But what I like to do with this onion is I've got it flat. I'm just going to follow the lines, the natural lines, right? The curves on this onion to make cuts. Some other things that I try to do too, a little more advanced, but I'll cut it in the opposite direction, and that's how I get a quick dice. But today we're not dicing, we just want slices because we want these beautiful long strips, right? So this is actually a really easy one. Again, I did not cut the root of the onion, I just cut the top off. And I try to keep my fingers just, not too close to my knife blade, but tucked in as well, because I want to make sure I leave here with all my fingers. But the trick, with making pickled onions too, is just making sure you get them nice and thin. I mean, they will be delicious if you make them thicker too, but I like mine a little bit thinner. And so I'm almost just shaving, like look at how thin this is. You can almost see through that, right? So very simple technique. And again, I said you can do it with any color onion. Now, if you saw what I just did, I had this onion that was like this, right? It's going to be a little hard for me to keep cutting because it might slip. So what I'm going to do is tip it, and then I've got that same shape again, and I can keep cutting this way. So safety first, right? And I would say, people often ask me about knives, cutting boards, what's the best equipment. I always say get a knife that is comfortable in your hand. It doesn't have to be the most expensive knife, but get something that feels good in your hand. I tend to prefer knives that are light. This one in particular has a wooden handle, but I do like something that's a little bit lighter because I've worked for many years with knives, and so I've had a lot of, experience trying different ones, and I find that the lighter ones work best and just are more comfortable for me. As far as cutting boards, it kind of ranges. I use different plastic ones. I like these nice bamboo ones as well. But you can I actually have several cutting boards that I use, and I try to use, some for meats, and I only use those for meats. And then I will also use some for vegetables or maybe breads and things like that. So I kind of have several different cutting boards in my kitchen. Okay, so I've cut all these onions. And what I'm going to do is just place them here. Our vinegar has now come to a boil, so I've turned it down. And what I'm going to do here is just add, I added my salt in there. I totally missed that step. Okay, but anyway, the salt is going to go in here. So once this is cool, we're basically just going to add that to here, and you can put these, let it cool on the counter. Don't put it directly into the refrigerator because it'll still be warm, but let this cool a little bit, add it to here, and then you can put it in a nice jar, and this is what you will get. So very quick pickled onions. Some people like to add like black peppercorns to it. You could add bay leaves, and you can do all sorts of things with it. Go online, there are so many different recipes. You can get really creative, like you could add turmeric to it. You could add in other vegetables with your pickled red onions. These will keep probably about, I'd say maybe a week or two. They're pretty tasty, so this makes maybe about 2 cups. and depending on how you want to use them. Today we're using it in kind of a sweet application for the ceviche that we're making, but you could use it like you see it pretty regularly on tacos, on top of fish dishes. They're so versatile. They can go sweet or savory, but you don't have to do any special canning. This is the quick way to pickle them. Okay, so I'm going to set these onions aside. Now that we have our beautiful onions, I want to get to the star of our show, which is papaya, because I have so much to tell you about papaya. One thing I would like to show you is, does anybody have quick tips for those of you who love papaya? Like, how do you pick a good papaya? Sometimes that's the hardest thing, right? Okay.
Yeah, I always look, I'm in HEB and I'm trying to figure out which one, right?
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, I take the paper off that it's in.
Yes,
So I can see it. And if it's got any, like, soft, like it's, not too soft, but yeah, that's a nice one, because it doesn't look like it has like any rotten areas.
Okay.
Or too soft where it's too ripe and it doesn't taste good.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay. Those are great tips. So basically, there's different varieties of papaya. There are Hawaiian, there are Mexican, and there are Indian. This in particular, what we find here at HEBs or local grocery stores, are called Meridol. And they're these beautiful long, typically they will get even more orange, but they start off kind of green. And what you want to look for is not the green one, but you want to look for one that has kind of this nice, beautiful, between yellow and orange tint. It does have a little bit of these spots, and that's okay. That actually means that it's going to be a ripe, sweet papaya. What you could do also, though, if you see it's kind of this color, it doesn't have as many of those spots, is you can let it ripen on your counter. I've done that several times too. I will say, I love papaya, and I did not used to be a fan of papaya until somebody introduced me to this variety. This happens to be, I feel like, one of the sweetest papayas. And I'm not sure if it's just the variety. I think it could be. You may have seen papaya where it's used, maybe it's shredded and it's used in a salad. That's more of like a sour papaya. So it's intended to be green because it's being used in a different application. And it has kind of more of this tangy sour flavor. But this one, I think about when we enjoy fruits, sometimes they are just naturally very sweet. If you think of pineapple, when you get a really good like golden pineapple, oh my goodness, it's delicious, right? But sometimes that could be too much. And I have found like with the sugar content in fruit, or even the acidity, something like pineapple, that can kind of stir up some issues with our gut. So something like papaya, however, has so many great beneficial health properties. And so those of you who've been enjoying it probably know many of these. But yes, those are kind of things to look for. You can also smell it. Now, when I take a smell of this one, it clearly is pretty ripe because you can see the flesh has turned kind of this nice, beautiful, like orange color, but it has this really rich, deep, almost kind of musky smell. And it's going to be delicious. So the other thing that's kind of cool about papaya is the seeds inside. Yes. Has anybody who enjoys papaya eaten the seeds? Okay. I'm going to pass this around. No obligation to try them, but I want you to just look at them. These are papaya seeds. And if anybody wants some, you can actually use these and grow your own papaya. So if somebody at the end of class would like to grow their own papaya and has time to do that, feel free to take this. But I want you to just see this because I am a big proponent of using everything in one ingredient.
So they're edible?
They are edible, but they are sharp like they have kind of this spicy, peppery, almost radish flavor. So if you'd like, you can try that if you want to be brave this morning and start your morning with that. I just think they're a cool shape. I have also heard that you can dry them out and grind them and use them like black pepper. There's a lot of health properties in these papaya seeds, so don't throw them away. They're really cool. Okay, a couple other things about papaya, but I'm going to take these seeds out for right now. While you guys are passing that around, I'm going to scrape the seeds out of this one. There are some additional health benefits and nutrients in papaya. So obviously it's a fruit, so it's a great source of fiber, which again, happy gut, happy us, right? I'm going to put them in this bag in case anybody would like to taste them. Are you going to be brave and try some?
Tell us how to.
all about interacting and engaging with the food.
How much
So
are papayas run a pound?
right now they run about 98 cents a pound. So this papaya that I purchased was about $7, but we are getting a lot of use out of this papaya, and it's so good. So fiber is a great. It has fiber. It has potassium. It's high in potassium. Vitamin C, obviously, which is good for vitamin C. Pop quiz. And it has antioxidants, but vitamin C for our immunity, right? We want to keep our immunity, especially when we have an illness, keep our immunity high. And anything citrus, but these papaya tropical fruits are great for that. It also has something called papain, spelled P-A-P-A-I-N. And it is a digestive enzyme that helps break down our food. And I really am a firm believer in we want to make our guts the healthiest as possible because our guts are kind of like a second brain. And I'm so happy to see that there's more and more research about that, because a lot of times people treat our physical illnesses separately from everything else that's happening to us. And I think a lot of times it is very easy for us, because we get so overwhelmed with all the information, right, to just go back to the basics. And part of that starts with what we're putting into our diet, and that's the food, right? So something as simple as finding an ingredient like a papaya that can help us with digestion. So I do say, I have seen a lot of, and I've been a witness of it myself, enjoying more papaya kind of keeps us regular, and we want that. So put papaya on your list. Okay, so one thing I'm going to do with this, I've already chopped up a little bit of this because I didn't want you to have to sit here and watch me chop it, but I will show you. I typically, when I have a whole papaya, will cut off the top and the bottom, and then just basically you could take a vegetable peeler and take some of the skin off, or I'm going to take my knife really quick here and just cut some of this. But what we're basically looking for are some dices like this, right? So I'm going to add this to my bowl here. And I'm making a big batch for us because we're a nice big group today. But yes, papaya is one of those kind of wonderful foods that I feel like people in the know. There's even, supplements that you can get, papaya enzyme, but I say, why not just enjoy the fruit? It's, it's delicious and it's accessible. It's easy for us to find here. And it's year round also. I feel like I had another very interesting thing about papayas I wanted to tell you. No, I think that was it. I covered them all. Okay, so yes, as you can see, what I'm going to do, and I don't recommend this, but I'm the professional, but yes, you want to kind of keep it flat, right? But just because I've already cut my papaya in half, it's going to be a little bit trickier. But I just take my knife, and it's ripe, so it's just going to slide right down just like that. But I'm keeping my hands up here, right? I'm keeping it away from the blade. And I'm just going to do this. But again, it's so soft and firm that you could use easily a vegetable peeler to do this. I kind of do this with every fruit that I purchase, so melons, pineapples. It just looks cool. I'm going to go around the side here. And I mean, I'm smelling this and it just smells heavenly. It is really, truly one of my favorite fruits. My mother loves her sweets, but she's a very adventurous eater. And we really were on a papaya kick this winter. She was asking for it every day. And so, we were having it in our diet, and it's fantastic. So from this, we're just going to make some simple, little cubes. But I tend to just kind of make a few slices like so, and then dice from there. So I'm going to try to do this fairly quickly so we can move on to our next thing. And I'm going to have Jose keep me honest and keep me on time because I tend to be a chatter. And I wanna make sure we get to the good stuff too with our conversation about stress and eating. So I'm just gonna try to quickly and safely do this. Papaya is very slippery. So what I do recommend too, I don't know if you noticed when I was putting the cut pieces, I love doing this ahead of time. This is another thing that I recommend. If you have a few minutes to do any kind of advanced meal prep for yourself, you can do things with fruit. Papaya, for some reason, sticks to itself. I've never seen that in any other fruit. it must be something to do with the enzyme. I haven't quite figured it out, but I mean, it's still good. But it does tend to kind of stick to itself, so you just kind of have to pull it apart a little bit. But like if, for example, you were to cut up melon and something like this in these shapes, you could easily pull them apart, right, when you're ready to serve. Papaya kind of sticks together, so you might have to run the knife through it a little bit more. So these are kind of starting points, right? Don't worry so much about it has to be perfect, or it has to, if you're kind of new to cooking, I say, okay, follow the recipe, right? Follow it as is so you know what it's like. But one thing I like to encourage people to do is to also make sure that you're seeing, okay, this is a recipe that's just going to be kind of like a salad. It's a ceviche, and it's a ceviche because we're adding some citrus. So we have some oranges, and we also have some lime. It's kind of going to get a little bit, like cooked like a traditional ceviche. Usually that's with fish or something, but it could just be a salad. It could be a salad, or it could be something that you put on top of a protein like fish or chicken. I said I created this recipe in the winter. However, this would be a great one for the summer, right? Because the flavors are so fresh. You could change up the citrus in there. That is actually one thing I wanted to tell you about. So the recipe calls for something called cara oranges, which are, I have to say, also one of my favorite fruits. Now, those oranges, you can usually find them here mostly in the winter, so January, February. And a lot of people think that they are a cross between a navel orange and a grapefruit, because the inside, their flesh is really, really kind of this beautiful pink, and they're super sweet. But they are not. What I learned was they're actually like a mutation of a navel orange that was found in Venezuela. So very cool. But so if anybody's taking statins and they can't have grapefruit, don't worry, you can still eat cara oranges. Okay, so almost done with our papaya here. Ooh, we've got a lot of nice, delicious papaya. Okay, I hope everything fits in my bowl. I got the biggest bowl, so we still got to add a few more things. But, okay, so here we go with the last of the papaya. A couple other things we're going to add to our ceviche here are jalapeno and chili sauce. Has anybody used garlic chili sauce before? Mm-hmm. Okay. Fan of it? Or, okay. Yes. So I tend to not be able to, yeah. But you're still like, yeah, no, I'm doing it. Yeah, I feel that way about a lot of food. I'm like, I love it. I will pay for it later, but it's worth it. Sometimes you got to live on the edge, right? So, yes, so we're going to be using a little bit of spice. Now, I don't want to put too much because we don't want to overpower the star of our show here, right? But we want to balance this recipe. And when you talk about balancing recipes, what do you guys think that means? You talk about
not
cooking.
sweet, not too much salty,
Mm-hmm.
just nice.
Yeah, a little bit of acid. Sometimes when you taste a recipe and you're like, something's off. It's a little bit bland. It's because there's some element, fat, seasoning, something that's just not, there's not enough or there's too much. And so when we talk about balanced recipes, we want to make sure that we're looking at all those components and putting in enough of everything. So we've got plenty of papaya here, as you can see, this beautiful bowl. What I'm going to add next is this orange because it's really cool. I'll show you how I do the orange. You could just peel this with your hands and pop that in there. I'm going to make it a little fancy-like. I like this recipe too because you can put it in a cool cocktail glass like the one behind me there and pretend you're having, like a real ceviche. And surprise. This is a fun one where you could make it, I would say you could make it like an hour or two in advance. It really does need the time to kind of sit and develop the flavors. But because you've kind of got a jump start from the pickled onions, you're going to have some great flavor. And those two ingredients I was just talking about, the little bit of heat. The garlic chili sauce, for those of you who haven't tried it, is basically, sometimes they use red jalapenos, a little bit of garlic, a little bit of sugar, and some vinegar. So it's really a nice combination of flavor. I like to say it's spicy but not crazy hot, and that's my kind of heat. You just want a little bit of bite, but not something that overpowers everything, right? So this is my quick technique for getting to the center of an orange. My apologies, I was rushing through it just naturally, but I'm going to show you how I did that. So I take an orange, and if you haven't noticed already, there is a technique. So I always cut the top and the bottom, right? So I can get something flat to work with. So I've got that now, and I just take my knife and I just follow the shape of the fruit. It's that easy. And again, having a good knife is helpful. Doesn't have to be the most expensive knife, just one that you keep sharp. If you're not familiar with how to keep your knife sharp, I suggest finding a location. We have some good ones here in San Antonio where you can get your knife sharpened, and they will do it the right way for you and keep you safe in the kitchen. Because the worst thing is having actually a dull knife. Yes. That's another thing that my mother always disagrees with me on. She's like, no, I don't feel comfortable with using your knives because they're too sharp. And I said, well, you're actually going to hurt yourself if you use a dull knife. So we want to make sure that we keep our knives sharp. Okay, so we did that. I'm pretty particular. I'm going to cut a little bit more of that off. So this is just a regular navel orange because I could not find Cara oranges. But they look very similar, except for the color, and the sweetness is just off the charts. If you find them in your grocery store, please give them a try because they are so delicious. Okay, so with this, I'm just basically gonna make a couple of cuts, kind of cut them in slices, and then quarter them. So we get some nice, great distribution of this orange. And I can smell these already. They smell pretty sweet. But they're going to also add some acidity and some of that nice tang, add a little bit of texture to our papaya. Okay. And once we're done with this, we've got a couple more ingredients to add, which are our radishes. Any radish fans here? Okay, me too. I've been trying to grow English radishes, kind of those long, beautiful pink white ones. And they're coming, but they're not coming fast enough. I'm like so excited. I'm like, okay, they look great. But they're just not quite there yet. But we're very fortunate that we have some great grocery stores that carry just these regular red radishes like these. But if you find maybe some farmers markets where you can get some other varieties, I encourage you to try them. Do you all have ways that you like to use radishes? For those of you who are radish fans? In salads? Okay. I've heard people you can roast them and just kind of put some nice different, what they call compound butters. So you take butter and you chop up some nice fresh herbs, and then you just put that all over your roasted radishes. That's kind of fancy, but also could be delicious. Okay. All right, so I sometimes like to squeeze this a little bit because remember, ceviche, right? If you've had it, it is the work of the citrus and the acid that's kind of helping to flavor things and break down some of the protein in whatever you're using. Obviously, we're using papaya, not a protein, but just kind of want to get some of that flavor coming out. And I always say, work clean. I've got my napkins here to help me out. Okay, so a couple other things here, some radish. I'm going to do the cucumber next. So this is an English cucumber. You could use any kind. I like this one because I want to keep the skin on it. And why do you think I want to do that? Fiber or another thing. So we've got our papaya, we've got our oranges, and we've got now our cucumber. We have to keep lots of fiber in our diet because we want our guts healthy. So what I do again, I've cut the top and the bottom. I tend to like to make little dices out of this, so you could easily just, make a couple strips here and then go across the other way, which is what I'm going to do. You could cut it in sort of these half moon shapes, but whatever's easy. Again, we want to make sure that we're enjoying our time in the kitchen, not taking too much time away from our friends and family, hobbies that we might have. Is there anything that you all really enjoy doing? Those of you who are comfortable.
Watercolor.
Oh, watercoloring.
Yeah.
Okay, that seems like it would be a very relaxing
Therapeutic.
hobby. Okay, anybody else have some things that they really enjoy doing to kind of de-stress or relax?
Gardening. I like to
Gardening, yes.
I like to do puzzles.
Yes. You can really get lost in puzzles, right? I love that. I was kind of on a puzzle kick for a while, and then I just had to stop because I was kind of consumed by finishing so many puzzles.
And you can go to it and then go away for a while and come back.
Yes. I was actually for a while collecting puzzles of food, so that was a lot of fun. So they were all these food scenes. It was like hot dogs and candy scenes, and I was like, that's great. Okay, so I'm going to chop up just a couple of these radishes. Now, there are some vegetables like beets where you could eat the greens with radishes. I don't recommend that because it's a little too bitter. You could try, but you may not enjoy it. I'm just going to take a couple of these. And yeah, there are so many beautiful varieties of radishes, but these red ones are always very delicious. I often say too, when you're building a recipe, it's not just the flavors and the ingredients that you want to pay attention to, but the textures, right? So I've taught adults, I've taught kids, kind of ranges, all different populations. But what I have found is when you, in addition to having the balance of all the ingredients and the seasoning, the texture has to be it. And so I will admit I am not a fan of salads, but when I have everything kind of the texture, the crunch, the creamy, whatever, like that's really important. And I will say, remember that because we're going to be talking about that in one of the later lessons. I think when we're thinking about the foods that we choose, there are often some types of textures that we're craving, right? It's not often, or it can be like we like this food because it's rich or it's sweet or it's savory, but it can also be the texture, and we want to make sure that we're kind of giving ourselves a variety. So keep that in mind for, I think that's the last lesson we'll be doing. Okay, so I'm just going to dice these radishes, and again, keeping the skin on. So I'm just kind of, again, kind of like what I was doing with the orange, cutting some slices, chopping them into small little dices. Okay, and then we will get to juicing, adding our onions. This is really a quick recipe, but I like to chat, so we're kind of stretching it out a little bit. How are we doing on time? How are we doing on time?
9:43.
9:43. Oh, okay. Uh-oh. You better get going. Okay. All right. Well, maybe what I will do while we're doing this, okay, is I will have you take a look at your handouts there. And what I wanted to talk about today was, again, the biology, right? So if you think about how we are made up, we have something called an autonomic nervous system, which is basically responsible for all the involuntary things that our body does, which can be things like breathing, our digestion, our heart pumping the blood that it needs to pump. But there are two different tracks for that. So it can be two things that kind of work against each other, which is why I mentioned there on the handout, they're called antagonistic nerves. So if you've heard of the sympathetic nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system, that's what I really wanted to have us focus on today, because this is kind of the natural makeup of our body, the biology of our body, and we need to understand that first before we start looking at other factors that kind of affect how we're having these relationships with our food, why we're reaching for certain things. So the sympathetic nervous system, if you've ever heard the phrase fight or flight, quick raise of hands. Have you all heard that, right? What do you think that means?
You either fight and either fight for or you take off and get out of the situation you're in.
Yes. So way back when, our ancestors, it was all about survival, right? So fight or flight is our body's natural response. So we see a threat, whether it's real, perceived, and our body responds in this physical way to just keep us safe, to keep us alive.
Defense mechanism.
Exactly. And so they call that the fight or flight response, and it does things to our bodies like the blood rushes to our extremities to get us out of there, right? We're running away from somebody that's chasing us. That's a kind of a stress thing because our bodies are just quickly reacting, right? It's causing some physical reaction in our body. The opposite of that is the parasympathetic system, which is this more relaxed state that helps us slow down. And that has also been referred to as the rest and digest state. And we call it that because it really does slow everything down in our system. And when we think about food and our patterns with food and how we assimilate food, we want to make sure that we're giving our bodies the natural ability to just slow down and take everything in, take in all the nutrients, take in just the pleasure, the enjoyment of things, right? So just adding some lime juice here. This is kind of the extra citrus. I added the cilantro, and I also added some diced jalapeno. So the parasympathetic nervous system, we want to make sure that we have the balance. That's often referred to as homeostasis. So you have this kind of, these two different parallel tracks of one is just this quick, sudden, like just survive mode, and then the other one is kind of like, let's slow down, let's take it easy and just make sure that the body has what it needs to do what it needs to do. And I mention that because if you turn this, or actually at the bottom of that, stress is a good thing for our bodies. It keeps us alert, keeps our bodies regulated. But stress isn't intended to be a prolonged thing, and this is where our bodies kind of can get challenged. If we're experiencing stress on a regular basis and it is prolonged, that's when we start to develop a lot of chronic illnesses, inflammation, things like that. And so what we want to do is aim for that balance where we're able to just slow down and relax a little bit more and have that be more of what we're shooting for. So if you turn the next page on the back of that, I want us to talk a little bit about something called stress state eating. So has anybody heard that term before? Yes, okay. Yes, so what do you guys think it means?
When you're working or you've got problems with financially or any kind of stress, you tend to eat more, you tend to snack more. You've just got eating disorders.
Yeah. So stress state eating can look a lot, it can manifest in a lot of ways. And it's a result of, when we were born, we wanted to soothe ourselves, right? And so we turned to the one thing that's natural, which is nourishment and food. And so it's kind of a natural reaction for all of us. So it's not a bad thing. But as we develop, as we mature and we develop different habits, it can be one where we get stuck. And so that's one that I really like to explore. And I'll have you all, we've got a little bit of homework for today. But I want to show you these onions. Aren't they cool? I mean, they're gorgeous. Okay. So while I'm stirring this up so you guys can taste this, my apologies. I want to talk a little bit on that sheet about what are some of the areas where we can experience stress. So somebody mentioned work. The stomach, okay, so maybe your health, right? And you all, again, have gone through something or maybe are going through something where that can be physically, it's affecting you, but also it's like it's on your mind, right? That is a stress. You're maybe worried, there's some fear there's some anxiety. All of that is affecting our physiology. It can come from the workplace. I know I've had weeks where it's just crazy. And so, we have to be mindful of that. Sometimes it's fear of just adding a little salt in our chili paste here, adding things into our lives like around finances. Maybe, there's been some rough times and you're worried about your finances. All these little things in the background. We think about like the loop that goes through your mind, right? All of the self-talk that happens. All of that is contributing to our general state. And so how I talk to you about the physical, all these parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system states, there's also all this other stuff, the chatter kind of that contributes to that. So it can be from the workplace, it could be even from relationships, family, right? Oh gosh, we could have a whole class on that, couldn't we? So I want you all to kind of think about these things as we're working through these next couple of weeks in this series, because sometimes these things crop up in the most natural places, right? Like our work life, our family life, relationships. One thing that's on there too, I'm gonna put a couple extra of these garlic chili sauce, is the future. So, and I mention that one because in particular, we are often thinking ahead. We're looking ahead, we are planning ahead, we are so busy, we're on the go. We need to focus on right now, this moment. You're in this classroom, you're all here enjoying this Saturday morning. I appreciate you all being here today, and you took the time for yourself today. But we forget to be present in the moment. And so when we're thinking about the future, that can also lead to the anxiety, the fears, and the unknowns. And we really only know what we know today, right? There are people who are great at planning and thinking ahead, but there is some added stress and anxiety that comes from that. And so I encourage you all to, as we go through our week here, to think about where these stresses come up in your lives. And so if you take a look at the last sheet, that is your homework for today. We are going to have you all, and I really want you to participate in this, we're going to have you all take this sheet and for the week just trace your stress, because it happens everywhere. Even if you think you're the most relaxed person, or maybe you do yoga, or you do meditation, or you do your gardening, or whatever, right? Like you find things that kind of help you relax. But stresses are going to come up. And so I want you, if you see on the top right, there's some little icons. Designate one of those for your day, and maybe you're going to go through the whole range of those in a day. Sometimes you might, right? But you're going to designate that and just make some little notes. What was I doing? What triggers, were coming up? And then what was I eating? What was I wanting to eat? Or maybe I wasn't eating. Maybe I was skipping my meals. Just make some little notes and track that for the week. And then at the bottom, I'm going to ask you, how many days out of this week were you stressed? Okay, so I want you all to participate in this. I'm going to taste this really quick before I give you guys some samples. Okay, so I'm going to get some samples for you guys so you can enjoy this. And any questions? Yes?
Yes, actually, why do you only have Monday through Friday? You don't stress on Saturday and Sunday?
That's especially when you stress, so I didn't have enough space on the page. However, we'll be back here on Saturday, so I would like to, if you can keep notes, if you want to bring that back. And again, I don't know if I mentioned this, but I want this to be a safe space for us to share, for those of you who feel comfortable sharing, because I feel like a lot of times some of the stress comes from we feel like we're the only ones going through it, right? Mm-hmm. And I know you all, ThriveWell does a wonderful job bringing you together with these different classes to be able to know that you have community. And this is no different. But I would hope that you all participate in some of these exercises and activities that I'll be giving you, because I want you to share so we can learn from each other. You all will probably teach me a lot as well. I like to say I know a little about a lot of things. But there are still some things where it is helpful for me to hear from the people that I teach, because there's some great information that I'll be sharing with you. But this is one simple exercise, I hope, that will help us now just start to see, like, for you an individual, as you are a unique person, like, what are some of the things that you're seeing come up? Because again, I go back to, we have to pay attention to our body wisdom, and without that, all these other things that we're doing to keep ourselves healthy, they're good, but they won't be cemented for the long term, because we've got all these other things in the background, right, that we still haven't addressed. So I'm hoping that this exercise will be a fun one as well. I'm going to do it with you. So there's that. Jose, I encourage you as well to participate.
I don't think we have enough paper.
I know, right? Seriously, I know. But yeah, so let me pass this out so you guys can try. We'll stop talking, but if you guys have any other questions, please.
Do you want to put the spoons in each one of them?
Sure, yeah, that'd be great. Make sure you all have a chance to try this. It is delicious. This recipe, obviously I did a bigger batch, but you could make this and it'll keep, for a few days. It is a fresh recipe, so I wouldn't keep it in the fridge longer than a week, but it is pretty delicious.
They're not allowed to take this home.
They're not allowed to take this home. Well, thank you all for being here today. I really appreciate you joining our class today, and I look forward to seeing you in the next class.
Oh, thank you.
Enjoying
You want
sitting
her
here.
to
What's
say
one thing
anything
that
to
you
end it?
will take with you from today?
I was recording all the time, but she has to look good. Okay.